take a picture of this Jew.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Rabbi Smith.
Is that good?
Yes, beautiful.
Okay. You see where we are? We're on 80B, 80B1, if you have the art scroll. Okay, so yesterday we had an interesting discussion. We have a machlekes, Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim in general, about if things get confused. Rabbi Eliezer was more lenient. He said that you can apply it anyway. Is it your side? So, and the Chachamim were much more strict. The Chachamim were more strict. Said, no, if things are confused, we don't allow you to do it in the incorrect way, and you should spill it out. So then we had a discussion. The Gemara quoted, let's say, the water of a paraduma that's meant to be sprinkled on someone that's tamei, someone that came in contact with a dead body. In order for him to enter the temple, he has to have water from the red cow sprinkled on him twice in that week, on the third day and the seventh day. So they would take ashes and they would mix it with water, special water from a spring. If someone then diluted that water, it's already mixed with ashes, and extra regular city water or other water got mixed in. So Rabbi Eliezer says, oh, just sprinkle twice. And there's a discussion, why should he have to sprinkle twice? So there were three possibilities here. There was the opinion of Rish Lakish, there was the opinion of Rava, and there was the opinion of Rav Ashi. And it has to do with three possibilities. There's three rules that we're dealing with. First of all, does water mix uniformly? Does two liquids mix uniformly, that it mixes equally? Second rule is, do you need a certain measurement when you sprinkle the paraduma, when you sprinkle the water? Or any amount is good enough? And the third thing is, if you sprinkle twice, and if you do need a measurement, when you sprinkle twice, will those two add up to be the measurement? Or do you need the measurement in each sprinkling? So obviously he can't hold that sprinkling twice does not add up, because he says to sprinkle twice. Rish Lakish says that it doesn't mix uniformly. No, Rish Lakish said that it does mix uniformly. However, you need a measurement. So you sprinkle twice and you'll get the measurement. But maybe even when you sprinkle twice, you don't have the measurement, because maybe you mixed in a certain, the ratio isn't good. Rish Lakish says, no, we're talking about a case where the ratio is exactly the amount of two sprinklings, so you sprinkle twice, you'll automatically get the measurement. Rava said that really it mixes uniformly, but you don't need a measurement. So sprinkle once and you've already accomplished if it mixes uniformly. We said that Rava says that there's a knas. The sages were afraid that you're going to add in extra water to dilute it. You want it to last longer. It was very expensive, probably. Paraduma was, they went out of their way to pay extra money to get this. So someone may make a fine on him. If he adds in water, then he has to sprinkle twice to get rid of the extra that he added in. Rav Ashi says that it doesn't mix uniformly. Liquids don't mix uniformly. That means that when you're going to sprinkle, you could have nothing from the paraduma. So you have to sprinkle twice to be able to get it. And we're talking about, it must be that we're talking about that there is exactly the ratio that if you sprinkle twice, exactly that amount, that if you sprinkle twice, you'll have sprinkled everything. And therefore you'll have it, because it doesn't mix uniformly. Okay. We had some questions on... The first question that we asked was on Rava. Well, the first question was on Rish Lakish, and then the Gemara started to ask on Rav Ashi. The first question that we had on Rav Ashi, we mentioned yesterday. You know, let's go over that. Do you see where it says Va'itanya? Va'itanya, we'll go through it quickly. Sorry, it's right on the top of the page. Right on the top of the page. Turn back in your Gemara. Turn back one page. Va'itanya was also taught in a brisa. It says Behedi was taught clearly.
I'm sorry, where is this from?
Starting on 80B.
B.
Right on the top, very top word. Va'itanya was also. This is the first question on Rav Ashi, right there. Va'itanya, right on the top. Va'itanya.
That says V'nisera maybe behen left. Oh, I'm sorry. So I was open up. I'll find.
It's pay.
Right, thank you.
But it was also taught in the Brisa Behedi clearly. Hanitanan Lamaila, that sacrifices that are put on the upper part of the Mizbech is divided in half.
Mm-hmm.
There's like an equator line around the Mizbech. In certain sacrifices, the blood needs to be sprinkled on the upper part, certain sacrifices on the bottom part. Surprisingly, the oila goes on the bottom. You would think oila goes on top. Oila goes on the bottom, the chatas goes on the top. But by an oila sa'if, it's the other way. Oila sa'if is on the top, and a chata sa'if is on the bottom. When it's talking about animals, the oila is on the bottom. And let's say the blood gets mixed up from these two animals. So Rabbi Lezer yitin l'mayla. You put the blood on the top. Rabbi Lezer holds that the blood that goes on the upper part of the mizbeach takes precedence. So in other words, the blood's mixed up. So according to Rabbi Lezer, he's more lenient. You're allowed to put the blood on the altar, even though you may be putting part of this blood in the wrong location. And then afterwards, you'll put it on the bottom. In other words, some of this blood definitely needs to go on the top. Some of it can go on the bottom. Rabbi Lezer says, don't worry, put it on the top and put it on the bottom. I said the blood that you're putting on the top is, some of it doesn't belong there. He says, okay, just consider it like water. So, Rabbi Lezer says you put it on the top, and he says, "V'atachtainim alolai," and then it will also help for the bottom, because the remnant of the blood you have to put on the bottom as well. So, the Gemara is going to discuss what it means that it's going to help for the bottom. It doesn't mean that it's going to help for carbon oila, or it doesn't mean that it helps for the chatas, for the shirayim. We'll see shortly. V'i amretein bila, but according to Rav Ashi, that says that liquids do not mix uniformly. They don't mix equally. This is going to be a question on Rav Ashi. Amai oluloi, why does it satisfy for the upper part, for the sacrifices that need to go on the upper part of the altar? You have the blood is all mixed up. So you take some of the blood, you put it on the top. And we say that that's supposed to satisfy for the carbon chatas. That's supposed to go on the upper part of the altar. But it's very possible that if liquids don't mix uniformly, what blood did you get when you sprinkled it?
Like oil and water.
I'm sorry?
Like oil and water.
Like oil, like that's an example. But here we have two bloods. Here we have two bloods. Possibly they don't mix.
That goes on the bottom.
The chata by a bird.
Oh,
by a bird goes on the bottom. But here it's meant to go on the top. So it's possible that when he sprinkled the blood on the top, he got only the blood from the oila, which is totally wrong, because it doesn't mix uniformly. Dilma kiyor vel yoinim lamata v'tachteinim lamayla, maybe got exactly wrong. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. So the Gemara answers, Achmayaskinan kiven de ruba el yoinim v'kiyor lamayla shir tachteinim v'oid. Here's how it worked. There was, the ratio was, let's say, 60-40. So the ones that needed to go on the top was 60. You put on the top 50. So you know that you have, even if everything went wrong, and you got all the 40, which was meant to be on the bottom, but you also have an extra 10 that's on the top, right? So you definitely got some of, because you added to the proportion that was meant to be on the bottom. So it can't be that you only got, because you added more in. So therefore, you definitely satisfied it. So the Gemara asks, the problem is that the Mishnah continues, and it says that you've satisfied both. Now, if everything went wrong, and you think that you've still satisfied the sacrifices that belong on the top, why? Because you did the ratio, the proportion that was meant to be on the bottom, plus a drop, which means that you definitely satisfied the sacrifices that belong on the top. But if everything went wrong, then you have no blood left that belongs on the bottom, that went on the bottom. You put it all on the top. But you said that you also satisfied the sacrifice that belongs on the bottom. It's possible that everything went wrong, and all the blood that was supposed to go on the bottom is already on the top. Now, granted, the top is satisfied because you put on more on the top than that could possibly have been only the bottom. right? Only the lower sacrifices. So the Gemara answers, L'shem Shirayim. Totally new story. You didn't really satisfy the sacrifices that need to be applied to the lower part of the altar. You didn't really satisfy that. What you did was you satisfied the sacrifices that belong on the top fully. Not only did you put on the top, but the remnant of the blood you also put on the bottom. That means that you only satisfied the sacrifices for the top. So when the Mishnah says that the lower ones was satisfied, worked, doesn't mean the lower sacrifices worked. It means the application for the upper sacrifices also was put on the bottom because the remnants. You have to do two parts to the sacrifice. You're supposed to apply the blood to the altar, and the remnant of the blood you pour on the base of the altar. So when you applied it to the top and you applied it to the bottom, you satisfied the remnants of the blood being put on the bottom, but not that the karban oila worked that's meant to be on the bottom, because it's possible that everything went wrong and all the oila blood was put on the top. That's the possibility. Okay, Tashima. Come and listen. Tashima, come in here. That's the way the Bavli brings proofs for one of the opinions here. Or questions. He usually quotes a Mishnaic source. He usually quotes a Brisa or a Mishnah. Here, what are we doing? We're quoting a Brisa. And it's going to be a question on Rav Ashi. Remember, Rav Ashi is of the opinion. Rav Ashi is the author of the editor of the Talmud. And he's still being questioned by the members of his yeshiva. So... or if you accept that it's being edited by the Stamayim, whoever. It was Rabbanan Savaroi that were possibly still working on the Talmud. Rav Ashi's opinion is that the liquid doesn't mix uniformly. So it's going to be easy to question that, because whenever it's going to say that you've satisfied any sacrifice by applying it, even though it's mixed up, immediately you're going to be able to ask, maybe not, maybe you got all the wrong blood. If you say it doesn't mix, you can. Every case that we have in the Mishnah is going to be a problem. The Mishnah says, the Brisa says that if you applied to the bottom, what are we talking about over here? The blood got mixed up. Blood that belongs on the top and blood that belongs on the bottom of the altar. Yes, you with us, Rabbi Nachman? So you put it below, and the Kayan didn't ask. It got mixed up, and he didn't bother asking the Rabbi Kayan. So what's going to be the halacha? Rabbi Eliezer Emer Yachzer v'yitin l'mayla. Rabbi Eliezer says, you go apply the blood above, v'atachtayim malulay, and the lower one will also be satisfied. Why will the lower one be satisfied? Because you already put on the bottom. So you have two sacrifices here. Let's say you have a chatas and a naila. You apply to the bottom. Rabbi Eliezer says, don't worry, just apply to the top. Now, we're asking here is that if Rav Ashi is correct that the waters don't mix, that the bloods don't mix uniformly, maybe when you applied to the bottom, which blood got there? Everything that could go wrong went wrong. You applied the upper ones to the bottom. When you then went, you applied the chatas, all the chatas blood ended up on the bottom. Yes. And if you, afterwards, Rabbi Eliezer says, go continue applying to the top. So maybe it was all the oil blood that went on the top. It's not supposed to be on the top. It's supposed to be on the bottom. If it doesn't mix uniformly, if the liquids don't actually mix together. It's going to be hard to explain this. So the Gemara answers, Hachanami, here also, Brubel, Yonim, Kriyav, Lamal Shit, Hachtein Avoid. No. The answer is that the ratio works out exactly like we explained before, that it was a 60-40 ratio. And therefore you applied to the top 50. So you definitely, even if everything went wrong and all the 40 ended up on the top, but you still have an extra 10 that got on the top as well, so that's why it's satisfied. So this is called a daichik. You see, the Mishnah, or the Brisa, is talking about every possible scenario. It comes along, because we have a question, we say, actually, it's only talking about one case. So it's like when you have all of the opportunities to explain this Brisa in any way that you want, whatever the ratio, it doesn't matter. And then the Gemara starts questioning it. And it turns out that its application of when this brisa is applied is only in a certain scenario, and it's hardly ever applicable. It's called the doichik. Why? Because you're squeezing it into one case when it had all of those opportunities of being explained in any proportion, right? So really, you try to avoid this, but when you have a very strong question, you're compelled to look for an answer. So you say, it's talking about only one case. So the Gemara asks, but if you applied everything to the top of the bottom one, possibly, so then how does the brisa continue? But it says that it satisfies the bottom ones. It says l'shem shirayim. Nope. Doesn't mean that it satisfies the bottom sacrifices. It means that it satisfies the upper sacrifices for the remnants that you poured on the bottom. Because it could be that all the bottom sacrifice, all the blood from the oila, which is meant to be on the bottom, was already put on the top, and there's nothing left if everything went wrong. So what we explain is that no, the chata sacrifice is fully satisfied because you put enough on the top that it definitely covers for the chatas, which belongs on the top, the sin offering, and also the remnant of the blood was put on the bottom. It's talking about the remnant of the blood that goes on the bottom, not the oila that goes on the bottom. The remnant of the chatas, which goes on the bottom, satisfied. Tashma, I have another question. It's the same thing as we explained. It's going to be very difficult to explain any of these cases, according to Rav Ashi, that the blood doesn't mix. However, here it gets a little bit more complex. Nastan lamaila v'lei nimlach. Okay, again, you have this mixture. And the case before was that you apply the blood to the lower part, and then we said you apply it on the top. Here what happens is, you applied it to the top first, and you didn't ask. You see the brackets? You read through the brackets. Everyone agrees that you then go ahead and apply it to the bottom. Why should you apply it to the bottom? Why should the rabbis agree with that? Usually the rabbis said that if there's a mixture, it has to be poured down the drain. They're very strict about it. There was a drain in the temple then. It was a stream that went through. So here, the reason is because even if let's say it's the blood that belongs on the bottom that's left in the container. So apply it to the bottom. Let's say it's the blood that belongs on the top that's left in the container. Well, the remnant of the blood belongs on the bottom also. So everyone agrees that you pour it on the bottom. Whether it's the bottom one or whether it's the top one, the remnant of the top goes on the bottom, so it's no problem to put it on the bottom. Ve'elu ve'elu alulai, and both sacrifices are satisfied. They work. The problem is that if everything went wrong, then all the blood from the bottom you applied to the top. If it was 50-50, and you put half of it on the top, so then it could be it's totally messed up. What does it mean that you're satisfied for both sacrifices, the low ones and the up ones? We give the same answer, 60-40 ratio. And when you applied to the top, you applied 50%. So you definitely satisfied the top one, because even if all the bottom one is on the top, you covered that. You covered the top one as well. The problem is, you see in the brackets, but it says that you satisfied both sacrifices. If all the sacrifice that belongs on, all the blood from the sacrifice that belongs on the bottom was applied to the top, so you missed it. It all went on the top. So Gemara says, Miktani elu ve'elu maidim. Does it say that these and these agree? Elu ve'elu alolai ktani. Elu ve'elu alolai. It says that these and these are satisfied, but not that everyone agrees. You see, if you look back,
like a knas?
No, what's happening here is, if you look in the first brackets, it says everyone agrees. It says the word elu ve'elu. Here's the problem. It's again a pronoun. This comes up. These and these agree is referring to the rabbis and the sages. The rabbis and Rabbi Eliezer. The sages and Rabbi Eliezer. That's these and these agree. Those are the two opinions here. These and these agree that you apply it again to the bottom. But what about, there's also two sacrifices. So when it says these and these, it says these and these are satisfied. It means these and these, both sacrifices are satisfied. That you've done correctly, both sacrifices, not correctly, but they're valid. Both sacrifices are valid. So the first case, the first clause of this Mishnah, or Brisa, of the Mishnah, says that everyone agrees, these and these agree, that you apply it to the lower part of the altar. That means Rabbi Eliezer and the sages. Then it says, these and these are satisfied. These and these sacrifices are satisfied. That is not necessarily saying that both Rabbi Eliezer and the Rabbanan agree that they're both satisfied. It could be, everyone agrees that you apply it. And hopefully you've satisfied it for, and for Rabbi Eliezer, you've satisfied the upper one because you put 50% on the top and there was only 40% from the lower one. So you've covered the top one because definitely 10% made it on the top. Even if everything went wrong, 10% made it to the top. And then you put the rest on the bottom. Why? Because the upper blood goes on the bottom. Whatever's left, which is a lot, possibly, belongs on the bottom anyway, because the remnant of the blood is put on the bottom. Even if it belongs on the top, the remnant is always put on the bottom. But the lower set, the sacrifice that belongs on the bottom, which is the oila, possibly you didn't fulfill the obligation, and that's the question. The Gemara is answering that when it says that you've satisfied both sacrifices, that's only going according to the Rabbanan. It doesn't say these and these agree that these and these agree that these and these are satisfied. It says these and these agree that you apply it to the bottom. And these are satisfied only goes according to the rabbis. The Seifa Asam Rabbanan, the Amri Yesh Bila. And when we said that Rav Ashi holds that liquids with the two bloods don't mix uniformly, that was only according to the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. According to the rabbis, they hold that it does mix uniformly. And therefore, every application probably contains a mixture of each. So you put on the top, you've satisfied it. You put on the bottom, because no matter what, you have to put it on the bottom, whether it belongs on the top or on the bottom. It goes on the bottom because it's either the remnant of the first application. And it mixes uniformly, so both of them are satisfied. Okay, Tashima. Come in here. Hanitanim b'matana achas. This is back to our Mishnah. The sacrifices are applied, the blood is applied to the altar in different ways. It could be put on each corner individually. It could be put on two applications, catty corner, and it's called two that are four, because when you put on the catty corner, the opposite, the jaywalk, you apply to each corner, you hit two sides. When you put on the corner, you hit two sides.
What's
so it's
the
really
practical difference between doing one on the corner and then doing it catty corner? You accomplishing the same thing?
No, there's different sacrifices. Arba matanes al arba karanes, or shtei matanes shein arba. And some of them you just put on one corner. You just put one application on the corner. So now we're talking about hanitana b'matana achas, shenasa arba b'nitana b'matana achas. The sacrifices that are put on with one application, as I think the Bechor, the Meiser, and the Pesach, I think it's those are the only ones.
The Kachim Kalim?
Yeah, the Kachim Kalim. Yeah.
Those are the one catty corners is Kachim Kalim?
Bechor and Meiser. No,
I'm sorry.
No, there are some Kachim that are also. The two that are four is a mixed, but it's the one application is the Bechor and the Meiser, the firstborn, and then the 10th animal that's born. Like you pass it through the fence and you pronounce it to be you proclaim it to be the Meiser. So let's say the blood of two sacrifices, a Bechor and a Meiser, get mixed up. So it says Yinasim Matan Achas. It's not a problem. The application is the same, so you just put it on. V'yamertein Bila. But if you say that it doesn't mix uniformly, according to Rabbi Eliezer, according to Rav Ashi, that the blood doesn't mix uniformly, why do you put one application? maybe you only got one sacrifice in there and the other sacrifice was never applied. The Gemara answers, we're talking about a case where it was mixed, just one application from this one, the amount of one from this one from this one. It's a very small amount. And you applied all of it to the altar. Okay. You covered your grounds. You applied it all. Tosfos has concerns about this. He says, why don't you just say that you applied all the blood? It says, Yinasim matanach, you put it in one application. It really means to say that you have to apply all the blood, is what it's saying. Right? The only way this works is if all the blood was applied to the altar. Because otherwise you can say maybe you only got one of the sacrifices.
All the blood, yeah.
But that's what it means. It means that all the blood was applied. And then the Mishnah goes on. Matan arba b'matan arba. If an application that needed a sacrifice that needed 4 applications. So maybe it says, what do? You have to apply 4 applications because it's the same amount of applications. What's the problem? You have to apply anyways to all 4 corners. So even though it's mixed up, so go do it. It's the same. It's 2 different sacrifices that have the same rule of where to apply the blood. So the Mishnah says, okay, so apply to the 4 corners. So you have to either whichever korban it is, whichever sacrifice it is, that's how you have to apply it. The problem is that if it doesn't mix uniformly, so maybe you only applied one of the sacrifices. So the Gemara answers the same answer. Talking about that you applied all the blood. All 4 corners you applied all the blood. Okay. It's still possible that you didn't get all the corners because it's possible that you got all the blood from one sacrifice went on 2 of the corners. But it still would have satisfied because even if you don't do it 100%, but I think it says that even one of the sacrifice, even if you applied it only to one corner, it's still valid. That must be the answer. Okay.
What happens if you have a case that you're supposed to have 2 corners and 4 corners?
That's what we're going to see in a moment. Very good. It says matan arba b'matan achas. It takes the extreme case. Let's say you're supposed to have 4 corners, and it gets mixed up with an application with a sacrifice that you're only supposed to apply to 1 corner. So what do you do then? So the Mishnah says that Rabbi Eliezer holds that you apply to all 4 corners. And Rabbi Yeshua had a problem with that. Remember? Rabbi Eliezer said that, it's not a problem. If it went wrong, so it's just consider it like water. Like it was water that was put on the altar. And it's not considered like you put the sacrifice too many times on the altar. Rabbi Yeshua says, no. You can only do 1. If you add more, it's as if you're adding to the Torah. The Torah says only put 1 application. Rabbi Eliezer says, but if you do less, it's as if you're subtracting from the Torah. They had this conflict, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, regarding this. The problem is, if you apply 4 times, it's very possible that according to Rabbi Eliezer, according to Rav Ashi, if the liquids don't mix uniformly, so then it could be that you didn't get one of the sacrifices, didn't get its blood applied. You applied 4 times, good. But who says you got that one sacrifice that only needed 1 application? Or who says you got the sacrifice that needed the 4? Maybe you only got from the other sacrifice. So if you're going to say that it was mixed up in a way, that there was only exactly that amount, and all of it was applied to the altar. It was the 4 applications was mixed in exactly with the 1 application, and everything ended up on the altar. If so, we're on the top line of 81. Yoav, do you have it on?
Yeah.
This is where today's daf actually begins. So if you use an app like Safaria or something, if you use Safaria, you just click on today's daf and it gives you the Hebrew English. It's a good English. Safaria. What is it? .org, .com. What is it? Safaria. It's a good app. They have the Steinsaltz Talmud for free on the app in English. You just click on today's daf.
Looking at your phone, trying to read the Gemara is probably
That's a
very
machlekes. Some like it.
Really?
You can see that?
Some like it.
Yeah, yeah.
Magnified.
There's two opinions on that. So
It's three opinions.
you go like
it.
Okay. For Kiddush Levana, the phone is the best because it's so dark.
Yeah, it's late.
In Yiddish, they always used to say, in Kiddush Levana Oisius. If you notice, the Siddur is printed. The Kiddush Levana is always, the letters are much larger because you were outside, it was in the dark, you couldn't read the small letters, so that they always made it like a bigger font. So that was an expression.
Mostly Shabbos, you have to. But the other thing, you have to cut. Everything
those
is
little
like
things.
the
Okay.
opposite.
So the problem here is that if it's exactly the ratio, if you applied everything onto the altar, so then it's impossible. Why? Because if so, Amalei Rabbi Yeshua responded to Rabbi Eliezer, Harei Oiver al Bal Tosef. You're going to violate adding to the Torah. The problem is that Hacha Bal Tosef Mehecha. Where are you going to get a Bal Tosef from? What was Rabbi Shua's claim? Shua's claim is that you got a Bechar. Let's say it was a Bechar that got mixed up with a with an Oila. The Oila needs 4 applications, and there are 2 that are 4. And the Bechar needs 1 application. Rabbi Shua's claim is that if you're going to apply 4 applications, you might be giving 4 applications from the Bechar. And then that's too much. You're adding to the Torah. It's like 5 boxes in your tefillin. It's like 5 corners on your tzitz. It's like an extra species in your lulav and esrog. You're adding to the Torah. It's too much. You're not supposed to do that. So what are we answering? What was? How did we have to explain Rabbi Eliezer that there's only the exact amount of 1 application of a bechar that's mixed in this? There's the exact amount of 4 applications of the oila that's mixed in, and you applied it all. So how does Rabbi Yeshua respond that you're adding to the Torah? You don't have enough to add to the Torah. You only have 1 application of a bechar that's in here. You can't do 2
What's
applications.
his question?
So what's Rabbi Yeshua's claiming that you're adding to the Torah by doing 4 applications on a bechar? You don't have enough blood.